Why are so few employees engaged at work? Search for Gallup State of the Global Workforce and you'll see some shocking stats about how disengaged employees are and how much it hits the bottom line. Apparently it's over $7 trillion in lost productivity. So finding and retaining the right talent for the right job is the number one issue facing organisations. This is one of the reasons I started this podcast. I think employer content marketing has a role to play, but so does leadership. If you have an engagement problem, you have a leadership problem. So I just had to get Sean Hagger in for a chat about leadership. Sean is a leadership consultant and an associate at Legitimate Leadership. He has experience in the pharmaceuticals and sustainable tech arenas, and he talks about the connection between leadership and employee engagement and how leadership can be more part of the solution than the issue. Let's get on with the chat. Hi Sean, how you doing?
Hey Chris, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for joining. I know you're busy, lots going on, but it's good to take a bit of time out just to shoot the breeze about a few things. We've known each other for quite a few years, and you're in this now like leadership consultant position, and I think when we were talking a few days ago, kept on going back to the one of the reasons I set up the podcast, the Employer Content Marketing Pod, and I kind of look back at my podcast description, and it said, according to Gallup State of the Global Workforce Report, 85% of employees aren't engaged or are actively disengaged at work. And this is a sizable piece of research. We're talking about thousands of people globally, so the data is solid on it. It's quite a major issue, really. And what I want to do is just us to kind of pick on that a little bit, really, because I fundamentally believe that it shouldn't be too much to ask that people are in jobs that they enjoy more. It's not to say everyone has to love what they do and never have to work another day of their life and all that, but is about making sure that more people enjoy it. So that is connected to finding the right people in the first place. There's also connected to retaining the right people in the first place, as you go on. But it's all connected in terms of like employer marketing. So what I thought I'd do is I looked at I kind of went back to the research findings. And it's quite a big piece, and I thought, well, okay, well, so this issue of declining productivity, what did the chairman and CEO say about how to fix it? And he said, first of all, is number one is move the world to a workplace strategy of high development. The single best activity for any team leader to deliver is not employee satisfaction, but rather employee development. And then second one, make every workplace in the world strength-based. The current practice of management, which attempts to turn weaknesses into strengths, does not work. Moving to strength-based workplace will change global productivity and growth overnight. Third one, move the world's workplace mission from paycheck to purpose. Of course, all employees need a fair pay, but they are now driven more than ever by mission and purpose and require a workplace culture that delivers it. There is a fourth one, but that's more about use Gallup's model and services, which is needless to say is effective. But so that's really what I got from it. So I suppose let's start off by telling us a bit about yourself, and then we'll go into kind of unpick this issue with kind of connecting leadership with this lost productivity.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me, Chris.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I spent a large proportion of my early career in operational excellence, manufacturing environments, pharmaceutical industry, and then moving into automotive. And last 4 years, I've really been focusing on manufacturing leadership.
Okay.
Leading large plants, large manufacturing facilities, and very recently, I've now just started a new career as a leadership consultant.
Nice. Oh, good on you, mate. Good on you. And so, tapping on that thing about kind of your role in in the manufacturing side of things. So, you know, I remember you telling me about it kind of over the years, and you know, reading about it on your profile is there's lean management there. There's Six Sigma. You are a green belt qualified. So tell us a bit more about that for people, you know, maybe who don't know so much about that side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to a lot of this goes back to the Second World War, actually, and it's just about making sure you're as efficient as possible in manufacturing. The idea of manufacturing is lowest delivered cost without sacrificing safety and quality. And in order to do that, because you are a big cost center in manufacturing, you've got to watch the pennies and they look after the pounds. So having an organized workplace environment where defects are easily spotted means that you can run right first time and more efficiently and save costs. And ultimately, it all comes down to how you solve your problems. A Six Sigma purport, you've got the place into an organized state. You can use statistics to then improve your processes, and it's very powerful methodology. Not applicable in all circumstance, but it is very transferable, and it makes big difference to organizations. What people tend to find is they put these transformation programs in place and they make an instant improvement, and everyone pats themselves on the back, and then when they turn around, slowly goes back to where it came from, you know, in terms of the performance. So you're like, well, why has this dropped off? Which is an interesting question to ask yourself. And my it's down to leadership, it's down to people.
Okay. Yeah, so it's process and people too. Well, sounds simple when you say that, but there's a whole lot of stuff there, isn't there, really? And that's why, particularly what we've talked about, you know, it's that thing about purpose and focusing on strengths, you know, about identifying people's fit within organization. That's stuff you've been kind of heavily involved in, isn't it? So let's talk about, so, you know, those the kind of starting point really is about, okay, well, let's look at maybe why there are issues with disengagement, active disengagement of employees at such vast numbers, and only 15% of people are engaged at work.
Well, what do we mean by engagement, I suppose, first of all? I mean, to me, that word means that you're passionate about your job, that you're willing to go above and beyond in pursuit of the organization's objectives, and almost it's what you do when no one's looking. You know, do you go out and do your best every day, even when you're not necessarily going to get any credit for it? You know, why is it that we've now got a world, or has it always been the case, we're just better at measuring it now, that people are turning up every day for a paycheck? And when you consider the amount of time that you spend in the workplace, I think that's kind of a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of the reasons I love doing what I'm doing. You know, I do consumer and done a lot of education marketing in the past, but you know, the employer side of things has definitely resonated with me because of how much time we do spend at work. And it might be a bit of a rose-tinted, simplistic way of looking at it, but it can't be surely too much to ask that more people in the world are doing jobs that they enjoy more, or at very least moderately engaged in, as opposed to being disengaged or
actively disengaged. I mean, to me, I think it's if you've got an engagement problem, you've got a people problem. In the manufacturing world, if you've got a safety problem, you've got a people problem. You know, these are they're similar things. And if you've got a people problem, my opinion is you've got a leadership problem. And you know, quite a lot of the time, I hear sentences like, "This company doesn't care about me. This organization doesn't care about us. We're just resources to them." And the way I always unpick that is, an organization doesn't have the capacity to care. It's a legal entity. The only thing that can care about you is another human being, and what they actually mean is, my boss doesn't care about me. My manager doesn't care. And people, this is a well quoted say, but people leave managers, they don't leave companies.
Yes, absolutely.
So why is that?
That's a very popular phrase, isn't it? Yeah, but it's there for a reason. It's used a lot for for good reason.
Yeah, and in my take on it is that, you're born, you go to school, and you either go to further education or you fall into a job. You try hard because you want a bit more money, or you're just naturally the sort of person that goes in and does a good job every day, and then you're good at the task and you get promoted, and they say, well, that thing you were good at, can you go and look after these 10 people that are doing that task? No one ever trains you for that leap. Or if they do, you get sent on an online course, or you go to a week's training course somewhere where they say things like, this is how you be a good leader, and you've got to empower your people, you've got to trust your people, you've got to delegate well, and they'll tell you all of the end results of what you need to do or be in order to manage and lead people in an effective way. But they don't often tell you how to do it. And people are difficult. I'm difficult. You're difficult. We're hard. It's a hard practice to lead people. It's not an easy job. And hierarchies which exist within companies, if you want bigger jobs, the way that we're set up in most organizations is you've got to go up and be a leader. I think that's definitely changing. There's been, and when I'm talking about leadership, I'm definitely talking about people management here. I've seen organizations move more towards rewarding people for technical competence now than they've probably done in the past. You needed a budget and people before to get that promotion. And I don't think that's necessarily as prevalent as it was, but typically move up the organization, then you have to have sharp leadership skills. And I don't think we teach it very well globally.
Well, is that actually, it's interesting you say it, because it's like, that makes me think of the whole thing of soft skills and hard skills. Those hard skills are, I think, often just appreciated more than the soft skills, but the soft skills are really important. In fact, they shouldn't be called soft skills, really, because it makes them sound a lesser skill set to have. And you're right, isn't it? When people are promoted, they kind of then move out of what they are good at and what they love doing as well. There's got to be another way, surely. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you end up basically promoted to a job that you don't want to do, because the job that you want to do, this is a generalization, but quite often you want to be doing the job you were doing previously because you were good at that and it excited you. And now what you're doing is you're in charge of 10 people who aren't as good at the job as you were. So the tendency is to go and carry on doing what you were doing before. You can always spot those people because they're very, very busy, because they're no longer doing one job, they're doing 10.
Actually, there's that gap in training there, isn't there? Because it's about going, well, yes, you may be really good at what you do, but what you're there to do when you're then in a leadership role is just give your people what they need to do their job to their best ability. And if you are only skilled at doing what you've done before, and maybe don't have the confidence to do what you're now meant to be doing, then there is toes being trodden on, kind of miscommunication, and that can have a massive trickle down effect, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, my belief is as a leader, you've got to build trust in the people that you serve, or the people that are in your charge. So you've got to, and beyond that as well, you've got to build trust by showing people that you are willing to care for them and you're willing to grow them. And that's what the legitimate leadership model, who I'm associate for, focuses on. And it definitely, when I first came across this in about 2016, it really did change my outlook on what a good leader needs to be. And I think we focus too much on knowledge. We focus quite a lot on authority, and ultimately what we should be doing is making sure that our people are the best they can possibly be. And sometimes that's not in the role that they're in, and that's a difficult conversation to have with people. Actually, this just isn't right for you. That's a give from the leader to that person. I've worked with people that have been in roles for 10, 12 years that aren't suited to those roles, and they're miserable but they come in every day and they try really hard, but they don't get any. They're not going anywhere, and they've never had a leader who's had the courage to help them to move into an area where they can make a better contribution. And ultimately, if you want to be a leader, you've got to be interested in people and doing those types of activities in order to be effective at it. And if you're not, then don't take it on.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, it was in the in our previous episodes, I was chatting with David Angus, the Chief Strategy Officer at Creative Digital, and he was talking about how they were looking at using something called the Enterprise Operating System, which is about looking at, they call it seats within an organization, the people and the roles that those people do, and looking at fit, basically. It's more about identifying strengths and, and aligning, readjusting on that, and then filling in gaps if you need to. But that was in one of my previous episodes. So you're associate at Legitimate Leadership, and so Legitimate Leadership have this framework. Tell us a bit about the framework.
Briefly, it's a framework that guides leaders on two main principles. One of those is that you're there to care for your people and you're there to grow them. And what that essentially means is that you're spending time and attention on them. You know them as human beings, not as human resources. Contentious one, but you like them. Well, I have to like them all. Yeah, you've got to find something to like in the people that you lead. That you know what drives them, you know what motivates them. You have a personal relationship with them. That builds trust, and it shows people what your intent is, and that's a really important core message that goes through the model. What is your intent towards somebody? You can't tell them I have good intent, right? You can only show them over time through the things that you do, and ultimately you pass the intent test on a daily basis. Every time, every interaction you have with them, every action you take, you're being judged essentially by the people that you lead, and that has to be in conjunction with growing the person in your care. Ultimately, we've got a very simple but very powerful empowerment framework where your job is to provide the means for them to do their job, the ability, skill, the know-how, the know-why for them to do their job. And ultimately, and the difficult bit, of course, is to hold them accountable to the standards that we've put in place. And doing those things separately from each other doesn't work. Caring for people, building trust in the relationship gives you the license and the ability to grow them, and you can't do one without the other. So if you think about like a high care, low growth environment, basically you're not willing to hold high standards for the people that work there. So what happens over time is that those standards slip and performance goes down, morale drops, trust in leadership drops, but you're being highly caring for people. So it's sort of it's a dipole. You're like, why is it happening? I'm so nice to everybody. Equally, if you're trying to grow people and you hold these high standards without care piece, then you won't build trust, and you'll end up getting resistance. So two of those things hand in hand are what's needed in order to be an effective leader that improves the players on the pitch.
Well, actually, improves the players on the pitch. That's we both like our football. We've often creeped into this area of talking about football as kind of a mirror onto the stuff we're talking about. So we were talking about yesterday, weren't we? Talking about kind of Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp and Alex Ferguson. What was their approach to players on the pitch?
Yeah, we use this analogy quite a bit because it's quite a useful one to get across some of the points that we're trying to make. But one of the key things we talk about is the ability for leaders to watch the game. You know, where is Pep Guardiola? You're a Liverpool fan, so let's do Jurgen Klopp. Where's Jurgen Klopp on game day? He's not sat in his office, is he? Where is he?
No, yeah.
You know, he's standing on the
he's
side of
watching,
the right? And he's heading every ball, he's kicking every ball, kicking every player. He's giving feedback to his team. He's watching what's going on. He can't play on the pitch. Rules don't allow him to. And he's not absent. He's watching, he's taking notes. And you mentioned earlier about, you know, there's this trend, or it was in the Gallup articles, this is a trend to round off people's weaknesses. Now, there's some sanity to that. If there's a particular business skill in which you're not quite reaching the standard on, but I think you can't go way too far with that. I've always advised people to focus on their strengths. You know, if you're a centre forward but you're rubbish in goal, there's no point spending the next 3 months training to be a goalkeeper. It's not your job.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
you know, what you want is directed and acute feedback from the coach who's watched your game to round off the things that you already do well, which is playing up front, scoring goals. So I think too many leaders get bogged down in organizations that want them to spend their time essentially doing admin tasks, collecting data for monthly reports, you know, attending endless tirade of meetings that have seemingly no meaning, and you're not spending the time watching the game, developing the players. And you know, what's a characteristic that's shared by all those top football coaches? Players leave them better than better players than when they join them, right? That's and that should be you as a leader in business. People should come to you and you know, and learn, develop themselves, find a pathway on which they can be the best they can be, develop good discipline, high standards for themselves, high standards for the people around them, and then move on to something else. And that's another part of being a good leader, is sometimes watching your best players move on.
Yeah, and actually, because there is an apprehension. It's, you know, I've seen a lot over the years of, you know, and read a lot about it and heard about it, where, you know, some organizations, or many organizations, as a popular thing has been, there's an apprehension about, well, but what if they leave? You know, what if we like train them up and they leave? Or actually, you in a leadership role should be happy about them going. You know, if it's the right reasons for them and everything, and it's going to help the next step in their career, then fantastic. And the football analogy is, you know, is a great one, isn't it? Because they can't go on the pitch and play, you know, and actually their job is to actually hire people better than them. You know, like they can't do everything, so they're going to be, well, you know, and I think that thing about hiring people, you know, that are the right fit for the role and the organization, rather than hiring people because you think they may not be as much of a threat to your career, your individual careers, I think is not necessarily something you have to unpack now, but is just something interesting that's come to mind.
I think hiring people that fit the culture that you're trying to create in the organization, and if the culture you've inadvertently created, not deliberately, is one of low standards and low accountability, then that's the sort of people you're going to attract. And the people that don't like working in those environments are going to leave, and they tend to be your best people. You know, and so you've lost them anyway.
Yeah.
If you develop them up and they become, and I believe what goes around comes around anyway. And if you're working in an enlightened organization, they'll have a good talent management scheme, and they can go to opportunities elsewhere within the same organization to continue their growth and development. And you start that ball rolling again with the next fresh face that comes along, the next talent that comes along. You know what?
And kind of, well, go on, mate, go on.
No, I'd finished.
I mean, culture fit, you know, there's that, often that's been talked about a lot, hasn't it, over the years? And it's, you know, sometimes that's, well, it can be seen as being, well, people that are like us, it's not. It's the people are going back to Gallup's, forward on the research. It's, people can kind of attach themselves naturally to a purpose, to a mission, and those values of an organization. You have a whole lot of, diverse people that can join an organization but can share the same, values.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Diversity of thought's incredibly important to me. I've always, in leadership positions, welcomed diversity within the teams that I've led and managed. I think it's extremely important. Sometimes there's one lone voice that comes out of left field that just changes your thinking.
Yeah.
Maybe we should kick that down the road for a little bit. That's a really good point. Especially when you're under pressure and there's things happening, you kind of jump on a course of action. You need that diversity. It helps creativity and innovative problem solving. And yeah, you've got to hire the right people into your organization, but who are the right people? So if you're not clear on your values, if you're not clear on what you stand for, and you can only be clear on what you stand for if you stand for it, and that means holding people accountable to high standards. You walk past the standard you accept. If it's okay to go home early, if it's okay to do substandard work, in my old industry, if it's okay to write a permit to work incorrectly, then that's the sort of standard you're going to get if you don't challenge those things, right? You want to create a discipline of people that have high performance as a value that they hold dear to their heart, as well as, more importantly, the way they behave. Because what are your values? Your values are essentially the order in which your beliefs land, in my thought process. Your attitudes, how you feel about them, and your behavior is what everyone sees. So if you set behavioral standards first and then performance standards, you're going to improve the culture of the organization, and you'll improve performance. And here's what I mean by that. Alex Ferguson wouldn't let you on a coach if you weren't wearing a shirt and tie and a blazer.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why make such a stand on such a small thing? Well, because this is what we stand for when we're Man United and we're going away from home. Or maybe, you had the same rule when we're going to Old Trafford. You look smart, you look presentable, we represent the club. This is our standard of behaviour, and this is what we accept. If you let those things slide, then what you're basically saying is you can get the result any way you like.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Right? And what does that do? That promotes competition. It promotes non-collaborative behaviours in the workforce. A classic example would be, the salesperson who goes out of his way to cut the legs out of his or her competition in the work internally to meet their own targets. That's not good for the business. That's toxic, individualistic. Yeah. It's toxic. We all come together to live in villages, towns, and cities, countries for a reason, and that is that collaboration is built within us.
We're here.
We're here. I mean, we spent, we're 100,000 years on the planet, in some people's view. 90,000 of them we run around on our own dying. It was only when we started working together that we prospered, and that's the same. That's the same in business. I think too much we focus on the results, and reward people for getting the job done and not how they did it.
Focus on the end, not the means to the end. Yeah,
focus on the ends and not the means. I mean, sport analogies are great to make the point. When we were kids, Ben Johnson ran the 100 meters in 9.79 seconds, lauded for the end result, a time that's still pretty meaty in this day and age. But how did he do it? He cheated. It's not how fast you run; it's how you run fast, right? The list is endless of the amount of people that have achieved great things, but not by doing it in the right way. So you need to be really careful about that.
I think so. For me, it kind of this podcast. A lot of this podcast covers is employer marketing or employer content marketing, which is what can organizations share externally and internally to attract and retain talent, basically. And I think for me, what you're talking about makes me think about how in the world of employer marketing, there is a bit of a malaise about things. Sometimes it can be the communication can be a bit vanilla. You've got these whole statements like, well, we strive to do the best that we can. We want to do things differently, and organizations can say all those things, and they might be true, but they can say them. But if you're going to recruit the right people, you actually create content of people proving that by the discussions they have. So for me, that's why content marketing is so important, because it's all well and good, like someone saying, well, yeah, come and join us, we're an innovative organization. How about you swap that with, actually, it could be a podcast episode, or it could be an event, or it could be a remote, Zoom style conversation about how breaking things and learning to fail quickly is something that really excites the people on, in that discussion. That for me is such a big departure away from what is typically, not saying this is across the board, but what's typically seen, as I classify it, as being no day is the same content, a lights, camera, action content, which is this marketing brochure where glossy kind of pitch on things, where actually a big part of it is about just letting your people talk, and I think then what you do is you then get people seeing that content, and you get someone who is going to go, actually, you know what, yeah, that's me. Well, they might look at it and go, no, I'm absolutely not in tune with that. I couldn't see myself working with these people at all. So I won't waste my time, and they won't waste their time.
And it's interesting how you can draw parallels between our two disciplines, though, because ultimately what you're trying to do is create trust. And you're doing that by showing people what we value and what we believe in. And your marketing strategies are how you're getting that across to people. The glossy brochure that just shows a perfect day in the life of, no one believes. So this is quite interesting.
And actually, and then you spin that off into internal comms, and the two are very much connected. Where when you are involving your people, not just saying, can you rock up to a talking heads shoot where you'll sit on a chair, you'll have a bit of an office background, we might be in a meeting room, and you'll just answer a bunch of questions and go off. Now there is a role for that, but if you actually have someone, and I've had it before actually, where I've had people I work with, they've been involved in a podcast episode for a client, and they're like bouncing at the end of it because they've shared their expertise, they've shared their opinion, and they've shared some stories. And actually, by doing that, they realize how good they are at what they do, and they make other people realize how good they're at what they do, because they're talking with those people, on that podcast. So I think, and then what you have is you definitely have that employee engagement piece, where I think people do. I mean, Dan Pink, actually, I WhatsApped it to you just before this our call, but Dan Pink has this book called Drive, talks about motivation, and he talks about mastery. That thing about having mastery is really important. And if you realize actually you do have that mastery over something and that autonomy, then actually you are more engaged, and you are in your flow when you're working. So I think all that stuff that I've just kind of talked about is really important for employee engagement, which then ties back to the thing about making sure more than 15% of the global workforce are engaged at what they do.
Yeah, and I think it's very, very easy for bad leaders to disengage people who are in pursuit of that mastery, which I believe is for a great many people innate within you. And I think it's been, the last couple of thousand years have been quite, it's been quite interesting how we've formed societies, and in those societies, people had jobs. People had crafts. There were guilds. There was the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. Big Gary walked around the outside of the settlement, make sure no one gets in. Because everyone had a skill and everyone had a part to play. And then since the Industrial Revolution, we've just reduced people to resources. And what do you do with resources?
Yeah.
You use them up. And that's a generational thing. That can go back 3 or 4 generations. So now you've got people that rock up to work every day with no purpose because they've been institutionalized into thinking that no one cares about them. We have to challenge. We have to do something about that every single day.
It's amazing how, I often said it really, it's this kind of hangover from the industrial age, and looking at processes and having everyone having their own workstation and turning up at a certain time to the factory, to that workstation and doing their work and leaving. No, I mean, God, you know this till the cows come home. Manufacturing processes have been improved significantly over the last 100 years plus, but there's a time when also that is kind of over mechanicized, industrialized, process focused, where it's not focusing as much on the individuals, and especially when now over the last 2 years you've got people who don't have to be, for the last 2 years they've not been at their workstation, they're not been in the factory. Obviously there are roles that do that, of course. I mean, you've been your job, a lot of your career has been part of that.
I mean, for the most part at least anyway. Definitely that side of things is changing, and for the better, because work-life balance can improve. I do believe that collaborative working's improved in a face-to-face environment. I'm not saying everyone should go back to the office 5 days a week all year, but I do think there's still a place for office-based working, or at least face-to-face working. I think it is good for the soul as well. I mean, I think mental health has taken a big hit in the last couple of years, and people getting lonely and not interacting with the world as much or through a computer screen as much. But on your point, automation's a good thing because ultimately it does improve processes. But what we've got to do is find a place for the people that used to do that work, and a way for them to contribute to society. And the next 100 years, that's going to be more and more and more and more prevalent. And there's more people, the population's growing. So we've got to, if you don't have a good leader in your workspace that helps you do that, then you're really kind of you're hidden, aren't you? You're depressed by the leadership. They're not giving you opportunities to improve yourself. I'm not saying that everybody has to rock up every single day. There is a definite place for people that want to come in, do the standard to a good standard, and go home. I don't have a problem with that at all. But I think we don't put enough in place for the people that want to do more or are in the wrong job, and that all comes down to leadership. And leadership's hard because it's lonely. And you need to have a certain amount of courage when you're that person. And what is courage? It's the loss of self. You've got to be prepared to put your self-interest to one side for other people. And I don't think the world is congruent to that at the moment. I think if anything, it's going in the other direction.
Well, there's that expectation by others, but also for yourself to have all the answers. And well, as a leader, you've got to come up with all the answers. But we've touched on some of this already. But it's like, that thing about diversity of thinking and someone coming from something from a different angle is really important, because it's good to say, I've only got half an idea. I've said it often on this podcast, actually. Half ideas clashing with other half ideas, and then kind of whatever comes from that friction comes, fantastic ideas. So, it's important not to have all the answers, because otherwise you end up doing it all yourself, or even worse, people who are working for you don't want to do anything. They become the disengaged. 85% actively disengaged.
In the manufacturing engineering world, there's a phrase called the long screwdriver, which is where you have your management behind you with a long screwdriver, constantly telling you what to do and how to do it. Well, if that's the case, why buy the centre forward in the first place if you're the one that wants to do it? And I think that is, it happens because leaders are not courageous enough to let those people go on the same journey that they went on. You had to fail, you had to learn, but when you're the leader, it reflects on you. The performance of those people reflects on you, and short-term thinking would say, I can't let this fail, so I'm going to step in because I know what buttons to push. So if you push that one and you fix that and then you do this, it will work. But who wants their dad holding their hand when they cross the road when they're 30 years old?
100%.
Do this. But that's what people do. That's what leaders do. And they do it because they're worried about themselves, not because they're interested in the development of the person. And it's not done through a malevolence, it's done through fear.
It's Sean, it's a fantastic chat. I think before I forget, I'm going to get a book off my shelf. I think my wife got it, or Zilia got it. But it reminds you of some of the stuff you've been talking about. So Matthew Syed, Power of Diverse Thinking, Rebel Ideas. He also wrote Black Box Thinking, but he's this book. I've not actually read it, but I've listened to the audiobook. It's part of my running. It's one of my many running companions, and he talks about that diversity of thinking, which is, different cultures bring a different way of looking at it. He talks about actually doing research with Americans and then Japanese people, and actually how the Americans looked at it in one way. They looked at the very specifics of what was happening in front of them, but then the Japanese team were looking at everything, the context around it. And he also talks about how, oh my goodness, I think it's the CIA, not the FBI, CIA, and 9/11, and how the CIA was full of people at the top of their game, but because they all thought the same way, and they hired based on a certain type of person, they didn't have that diversity thinking, which is meant they missed so many blind spots. I mean, even now looking back, I mean, obviously, looking back is, is easy to do, isn't it? But the things that the retrospect is, the things that in hindsight is, is brilliant, isn't it? But it's like there's some obvious things that were missed in terms of 9/11, and seeing oh my God, what's his name?
Bin Laden.
Yes, that's it.
It's good that we've forgotten.
And the CIA looking at, and America looking at Bin Laden in a cave, and just going, "Oh, but he's in a cave. He's not dressed as a soldier. He can't be a. They're singing to their people messages through song. What's that all about?" But actually, turns out that was an absolute motivator to the people who were following him, and so they did miss a trick. So my point on that is that because they hired the same kind of person, there wasn't that diversity of thinking, and by having those different cultures brings those different life experiences, those different environmental factors that do make you think about things slightly differently. Not quite the no idea is a bad idea approach in workshops, but it's appreciating that people have different views and bringing those to the table rather than having all the answers yourself.
Yeah, and you've got to be prepared as the leader of that group of people, and you don't necessarily have to have line management authority to be a leader. If you're going to step up into that role, you've got to be prepared to put your ego to one side, and even if you think you know the best way of doing it, then it's perfectly acceptable to offer your opinion into that situation. But you've got to make sure you surround yourselves with people that know different things from you, potentially more than you, and you've got to be starting out thinking, I can probably learn something from these people.
Yeah.
If your mindset is you're so under pressure, your boss is screaming at you, the customer's screaming at you, in manufacturing, the lines are down, we're not making any parts, in sales, I'm not making any sales, whatever it might be, the pressure's on. People, they move away from best practice. They know they shouldn't be doing it, but they do it anyway. I've been guilty of it. We all have.
Yeah, survival mode, isn't it, really?
It's survival mode. Yeah, it's like I've got to get out of this hole. So, and unfortunately, we don't spend enough time learning from those mistakes and rectifying them so that next time it happens, we do the right thing. And quite often we get rewarded for being the hero and the savior of the day, if you press those 3 buttons, it will work. And then your boss comes out, oh, good job you were here. But it's your leadership style that got us into this problem. In the first.
Yes.
It's a vicious circle. So,
yeah.
And you leave and then, you get promoted and then you have a bigger shadow to cast and you do more damage, and that's typically what I've seen in bad situations. Conversely, when you have a good leader, one that does focus their attention on the players on the pitch, the culture you develop is one of high performance, one of high standard, one of high caring about each other and the job. And the results that you get are sustainable and probably more than you thought were possible in the first instance. And what you want to feel as a leader, in my opinion, is like if you ever pushed a heavy shopping trolley down a hill and you've nearly lost control of it, it's that precipice. Like, whoa, that's what you want to feel like. I don't actually know what's going to happen here. I don't know what's going on. I don't know everything about my organization. Who's doing? I want to know who's doing what. Right? You should be in a place where you don't know what's happening, because that means there's independent activity that's going on, and people are, if well focused, advancing the goals of the organization.
I remember seeing, looking back over the years and seeing email exchanges, messages amongst my team, and then just getting on with it. It's like beautiful. It's like such a lovely thing to see, and you get involved when you need to. But it's really great to see people kind of in part figuring it out for themselves, but being there when they need it and giving them the tools to help them figure it out as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of an obtuse saying, but I had a boss a couple of bosses ago used to say to me, you're too busy, you got to get to a point where you can play golf in the afternoon. And ultimately, I know what he meant, and that was you need to make sure that they don't need you. You make yourself help. But when that point happens, you've got to ask yourself, what's your job? Why are you here? What impact are you making? What's your contribution? That can be quite a difficult question to answer, actually. If you stop doing the job of people underneath you and you start thinking about your own job, you're like, why am I here?
Yeah, it's true.
Am I needed?
It could be. It's a fine line, because it's a scary question to ask, but it also is a very exciting question to ask.
Yeah. Maybe I should be thinking about strategy and planning. Maybe I should be communicating to people about what that actually is. Maybe I should be aligned in the organisation. I haven't done any of these things because I've been doing the safety manager's job for the last 4 months.
Yeah. Well, Sean, it's been, as always, great chat. I think what we'll do is, we can always revisit this, in future episodes, and we can maybe focus it on a particular area, perhaps.
Love to.
There's definitely something around perhaps the internal comm side of things, maybe, but also that thing about the kind of content leadership should encourage more of, and leadership should make their employees feel free to be involved in creating content that is more about them than just what can seem like a bunch of corporate slogans that people don't really attach to. So thanks very much. Really appreciate it, Sean. And I'll see you soon.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks for that. Really enjoyed the chat.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the chat. If you did, feel free to subscribe to get future episodes, and please do share the podcast with others. It really does make a difference.